Hi, I'm James from OA Systems, and today we're going to have a look at a core piece of functionality. It's not new, but it is something that comes up a lot when I'm talking to clients about either their systems and wanting to optimize them, or new organizations that don't quite get their head around exactly what we can do with dynamics in this area. So the business process flow is what we're going to discuss, and I'm just going to jump into an account record here. And what I've done is I've actually set up this record and done what we see a lot of people want to do, which is say we need our team to capture specific information. And we need this to be in the system. And so therefore we're going to make it mandatory. So as you can see on this form, we have the account name, the phone number, the website, and the relationship type set at a mandatory status. Now, I'm going to show you what happens a lot when team members go to save a record like this. They hit the save button and it comes up, and you see up the top of the form it says relationship type field must be filled in. They look at that and they might not know that status yet. And that leaves you with two choices. Either you don't fill in the record, you don't put it into the system, and your sales team just don't use it when it's necessary, or they go and have a look at what's required in the field, and if it's, in this case, a drop-down, they might just pick a random thing from the drop-down list, or alternatively, if it's an open text field, they might fill it in with just a full stop, a question mark, something like that, and you start getting junk data in your system. So often we have to answer the question, how do you manage this in a way which means your team can fill in the relevant information during the process, but they don't necessarily need it on day one, the first time they open the form. And that's where the business process flow in Dynamics comes in. So you'll see if I go up to the top here, I can go and select a process. And in this case, I haven't made it activate automatically, but you can do that. And what I've got is an onboarding process. And I'm just going to jump through and you'll see at the top of the form, we've added this area for onboarding. And we've got a few headlines around what we're doing here and what we're capturing. And just to show you, you'll see this blue icon here. This is where we've got a business suggested field, but it isn't mandatory. And I put it on facts and I'll show you what happens in a moment. So you'll see that that changes what the business process flow is looking for. So while I've added this onboarding process, I will just have to go away in the background and make some of these fields on the form no longer mandatory so that I can show you how this works. So you'll see when adjusting a form, you can take that from being business required to business recommended or optional. And we're just adjusting all these records to be optional so we can show you how the business process flow works. So as you can see, we're back on that form and we no longer have the red mandatory fields on most of the records, meaning that somebody can come into the system and if I want to hit the save button now, I can. But this is where we can use the business process flow to be able to manage that mandatory information. So as you can see here, we've got the record with the account name that's filled in, and we've also got some details that, well, they're interesting, they're not necessarily. Now, for a normal organization, I'd assume account number probably was necessary, but we are just showing you how the system works. So I can click on this and go to the next stage. What you'll see here is that we actually have some records that are still showing as mandatory, but they're actually only mandatory at this stage, which in business process flow is called stage gating. We can still save the record, we can still have the record in the system, but we can't actually complete the full onboarding process with this organization until we've filled in those details. And as you can see, the main phone number and the website are filled in, so I could go to the next stage here. One of the things I've added into the system is the ability to just jump in a random number here into the fax number, and as I click on next stage, you'll see I've actually set up a record called fax justification. Now, this may be, for an example, that if somebody does have a fax number, as they're uncommon, maybe there's a particular thing you need to do to communicate with them, or any range of things that you have that are not necessary unless you've filled in that field. So that field wasn't set up as a mandatory field in the last step, as you can see here. It was an optional one, but when I filled it in, it did drop this extra stage in the process. You can also do workflows that trigger off answers that you've put in the workflow as well, meaning that if you want to send an email based on the fact that you've added somebody's email address during the onboarding process, or a range of other things, or even when we get to the next step and you pick a relationship type, you might have a series of introductory documents that you send out to organizations depending on which type of relationship you have with them. Those can all be triggered off the business process flow. The other thing that's really interesting with the unified interface that we're working on these days is you can actually drop that box off to the right hand side of the form, so that you can see all the other information on the rec board without it dropping down from the bar up here, and you can go through your various stages. And you'll see we've managed to go through this scenario and capture the relevant details that we wanted to have in the system as mandatory, but they weren't necessary for the first time somebody opened the form. This allows your end users to have a much better end user experience. It means that it's easier if somebody's working on a mobile interface for them to go and capture things on their phone or from their Outlook email when they're going into these forms, fill in the details very quickly as a stage one engagement, and then be able to go back to the office and perhaps fill in things like what is the organization's website or what are their phone numbers if they grab them off the site. So business process flows are really important in Dynamics, and they do give a great scenario for being able to manage how you capture information, how you make sure you get the relevant information to be able to generate the reports that you need, how to make sure that people haven't been moved to a stage of engagement in the process before you're actually ready to fill in that information, or if you have filled it in earlier, as you get to the later stages in the process, you'll see this was already filled in with information. Business process flows have been a massive improvement into the ability to use Dynamics. They are something that we recommend people taking some time to really think through the process. And if you do want to have a conversation with our team at OA about how you can implement these processes and how complex they can become, I would recommend going onto a website and looking at some other information. There is some blogs about what we can do with hidden fields and those sorts of things. But please reach out and contact us at OA Systems, and keep an eye out for other videos in this series. Thanks for your time.